Well, well, well. Welcome to a new Minecraft Pixelart video. I appreciate the time taking out of your day to check it out, and I hope you like it. But having that said, let's get into the details. This is Gears of War's Brumak. I hope I pronounced it correctly. It's a massive build, if I say so myself. This build competes for my second or third largest build that I've ever made, since I kept track of the size that is, rivaling the Big Bad Wolf build from a while ago. This build could have been recorded in one piece on screen, but then it would be horizontal instead of vertical, so you'll see some cuts to the other half of the build as we go, so keep that in mind. But that is showing the sheer size of this build, and I can now tell you that this took me around 27 hours to complete. It's one of my longer build durations to date, obviously correlated to the size as well. I've done a few 24-ish hour builds in the past, so this wasn't anything too new for me, thankfully, but it still took long enough. And that is 27 hours of building. Not 27 hours since starting building, no, 27 hours of building. Coming to the coloring though, as always I use obsidian for the outline and, some detailing on the inside of the build as well, and, to highlight edges. I did have a few issues in trying to figure out if some of the details were actually going to be obsidian or if they were going to be a different block, but I think it worked out pretty well in the end. This build used a lot of different shades of grey, and I think I used almost an entire hotbar of grey blocks in order to make this. Actually, for the first time ever, I used smoothstone blocks and andesite as a coloring block. I never really used it before, since the builds were never really large enough to let the texture of the blocks, like the smoothstone and the andesite, to fade into its general shade of grey, if that makes sense. As you'll see once we get to the coloring, especially in the legs, I believe that the brighter part of the legs is smoothstone blocks, and the darker side of the legs is andesite, if I remember correctly. And it just looks grey, because when you look at it from this far up, it actually just all blends into one. It doesn't really matter what you place, the average color will take over the block that you place, which is kind of the trick that some of the programs that let you know which block to place where if you convert an image to, let's say, a Minecraft build, do for you. It's the closest to what it should be, even though you're like, I don't get it. And this was one of the times where I actually got it. I pick the colors by hand, I don't use a program to convert it, but this was the first time where it was like, I'm looking from so far away, it just looks like the average color. So this is the first time that I really transitioned my skill, if I'd like to say so, closer to what the programs use, and that is just due to the sheer size of this build. And it also comes back to an next trick that I will explain a little bit later, with another coloring trick that I use sometimes. But like I said, this build used a lot of different shades of grey. Added to that, I also used a few blacks and a few other colors, like a yellow for the eyeballs, I guess, bone blocks for the teeth. Yeah, just a few different colors for also the armor pieces, but it's mainly just a bunch of grey. When I started this build, I thought the total amount of grey shades I actually needed was a lot less. But it turned out that most of the colors that I saw in the image were slightly off and I really paid attention. So it was not really a one-to-one comparison most of the time. And this meant that I had a few decisions to make. Which shades would I blend together? Which shades would I combine into one block? Or split off? Like, okay, is there too much of a difference here? Does it maybe look better if I make it, let's say, stone instead of andesite? Those kind of things. Which, if you do it plenty of times, because you have to stay consistent in your coloring, if you do it plenty of times, will it actually look better or worse if I do it in this way or that way? But like I said before, it was a bit of a struggle at some points, but it ended up working out pretty well. I also used a different coloring technique, which I hinted at before, which I also love in larger builds. And this technique I actually used more than just once, like the andesite and the smooth stone blocks. This technique uses the stained glass that Minecraft has. This gives the block behind the stained glass a different shade to it. I used this in the Husky build before, and if you've seen some of my Reddit and Twitter posts or have been watching my streams for a long time, I also used it on the Pursuer build on Dark Souls, for example. Which basically means, like, let's say you use a white wool, but it needs to look a little bit more blue or pink, and, you know, the block that you are using already, or that you're trying to pick from, just doesn't quite have the shade of pink that you need. Well, you can use stained glass over it. It will, like, double the amount of blocks that you'll use, and you'll have an extra layer on top of it. But it will give the white wool, for example, or grey wool, or any other kind of block, just that little shade of pink that you might need, or black, or grey, or green. And that is what I used in this. In this build I used endstone, which, once again, is not one of the blocks that I used previously, just like andesite, but at the end, when you look at it from far up, it was just the right color that I needed, in combination with black stained glass. I tried grey stained glass before on a smaller section that I tried to, you know, get a sense of what I wanted. But as you will see, I will remove the entire grey stained glass layer and replace it with black instead, since that one when it was way closer to the reference image. This is also one of the things that I just came up with when I colored a larger piece with the blocks and looking at the build again. This also shows that you can never check yourself enough, especially in a build this large, in a build of this size. You have to check, double check, and then once more. If it's not the outline, if it connects, if it's not the inner lines of the extra detail on the inside of the build that connect and make sense, it is the coloring. I've had so many builds where I changed the coloring afterwards that I could have maybe spotted earlier, but even so, if I didn't, and I just came up with something later, I changed the entire coloring, which was pretty much half of the building time another time. So, you might come up with something that might make your build look a little bit better, but then you also have to ask yourself, like, is it really worth the extra effort to put in? With a build this size and this, detailed, I definitely want to put in the extra effort, especially when I notice it, but when I don't notice it, and at the end, I'm like, okay, well, then the decision is easier made to, go over it and add it to the next time that I'm going to build something like this, instead of actually replacing it while you're still coloring the build anyway. But yeah, that's pretty much all that I have. This time is a little bit more of a ramble, but it also had way more information and way more stuff to talk about and explain about. And obviously, as you've seen, this entire video is 30 minutes long, so I also have way more time to elaborate on a few things as well during these things. Either way, that's all that I have really. There was a lot of coloring rambling and technique and stuff, which might be interesting to obviously some of you. But there has been a lot of stuff that has been happening throughout this build, and a lot of new things that I learned, old techniques that I pulled in again from way back, like the stained glass. And I just think it might be interesting for some people to learn about this and learn about different coloring techniques as well. Especially in builds this size, it's really easy to add in and to think about the extra options that you might have, which might end up making some people's builds look a bit better. And that's all that I'm doing it for. So yeah, lots of time put into this build, 27 hours. And if it's up to me, it's a very nice looking end result. And I hope you will like it too, like I said in the beginning. So enjoy the rest of the build, in which the coloring, I have to say, is so satisfying to watch. While editing this video down, I just stared at the coloring because it's so nice. It's on 50 times speed, in order to keep this video relatively short as well. But I love looking at it. Just you'll see what you'll see what I'm talking about. I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I did, because I loved it, and there's 20 minutes of it. Yeah, that is really it for what I have for you at this moment. Enjoy the rest of the building, enjoy the music, enjoy the coloring, and I'll see you at the end of the video. welcome to the end of the video. If you skipped ahead, don't worry, we would have done the exact same thing. But if you did watch the entire video, thank you so much, it's greatly appreciated. I hope you enjoyed the progress and the music while you were at it. Either way, I hope you enjoyed the end result, and if you did, make sure to leave a like and a comment, and if you'd like to see more, make sure to hit that subscribe button. There are also plenty of other builds already on this channel, and there are still many more to come. Also, if you would like to see the builds being made live as I go, feel free to check out either my Twitch channel or this exact same YouTube channel, since I stream on both at the same time. Come hang out with us and request a build of your own, and who knows, maybe the next one will be yours. Anyway, that's all that I have for you today. So have a great day, and until next time, my dudes. Until next time.